Buenos días, amigos de Minnesota Latin Radio. Les doy la bienvenida a Enterate Minnesota. Hello, good morning, my friends. I welcome you to Enterate Minnesota. Today, I have the honor to have one of the candidates for mayor in Minneapolis. And many of you have called me, asking me, and requested me to please invite him. So thank you so much,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Omar Fateh, to
Thank
come
you.
to Enterate Minnesota.
Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for having me.
No, I'm very grateful, and you guys accommodate and try to make it work as soon as possible. So I am very grateful for be so flexible.
Honored to be here.
So, Mr. Fateh, you make history as Minnesota first Somali and American Muslim state senator. What inspired you to run now for mayor of Minneapolis?
Thank you so much again for the opportunity. And so, a couple things. Number one, as a state senator, I've had a lot of people reach out to my office, whether it's office hours, whether it's in community, whether it's at in local coffee shops where I try to meet people in the most accessible way. Folks are really worried and struggling, and they reached out to me about issues, a whole host of issues, from public safety to how we address homelessness, to 911 response times, to small business, a whole host of issues that relate to local issues that were outside of my control. And so, coupling that with right now, what I'm hearing from residents that I've heard also as a senator is that there are two versions of Minneapolis, one for the wealthy and the well-connected, and then the rest of everyone else, which are the renters, the immigrants, working class families. While one side gets accessibility and protection, the rest get broken promises. And so I want to make sure that we're representing our working class families and our most vulnerable, and having a city that works for everyone.
To work for we have a very diverse city for sure,
Yes.
and it's the largest city in the state. Obviously, whatever happened in Minneapolis, it will have consequences, or it's a domino effect for the rest of the
Yes.
state.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about safety and community trust. So after the events of 2020, the trust between the community and the police is still a little sensitive. So tell me, how do you think you can improve the safety in Minneapolis?
Yeah, absolutely. So after the murder of George Floyd, uh, we saw an uprising. It was a really traumatic, heartbreaking, tragic event that was not only watched and felt in Minneapolis, it was watched and felt in Minnesota, in America, globally. It
Correct.
was a global event. And so people were fed up. They wanted to see a public safety system that works for everyone, and understanding that having a having a police force that is accountable does not mean you're anti-public safety. Just like we hold our nurses accountable to a standard, or our teachers to a standard, it's correct to also have hold our police officers to a standard. What I've been hearing from folks on the ground and as a senator is that multiple things. Number one, we have two consent decrees, one from the federal and one from the state, that have showed and displayed systemic bias and discrimination and practices against Black and Brown people. That has to change. But on top of that, we've seen the need for more diverse and alternatives to policing, because we don't need an officer for every single response. And what do I mean by that? The city report last year showed that nearly half of 911 calls
Are from
to MB,
Minneapolis, right?
no, half of 911 calls in Minneapolis can be diverted away from police, meaning we don't need an officer for every response, for every call. For example, if there's an 11-year-old child with having mental health struggles, and someone calls 911, you don't need an armed officer for that. You can have a mental health worker, BCR, something like that. And so that also ties into what I heard at the Capitol. I had officers coming to the Capitol from different locations saying, we don't have the resources to respond to every single call. We're being stretched out too thin. And so if we're able to take away half their caseload and say, you don't have to respond to these calls, they're able to focus on violent crime. They're able to focus on drug trafficking, human trafficking. They're able to focus on clearing the backlog of investigations that have to get cleared up. And they're able to keep our communities more safe in a better way. And so we envision a public safety system that has law enforcement addressing violent crime, but also alternatives to policing, so that the calls that don't need an officer for every single time, then we can have those alternatives show up, like behavioral crisis response, like mental health workers, and so on.
Yeah, I think some of the concern has been that after the George Floyd, I think the police lost about 40%, right?
Yeah.
Minneapolis Police
Yes.
Department.
Yeah.
And ever since, the crime in Minneapolis been increasing and increasing. I remember having just recently, in less than 2 months, was 500 cars broke.
Yep.
So I think people have concern because let's say it's a domestic violence,
Yeah.
and I remember one of the police was shot
Yeah.
by a call from a domestic violence. Then
Yes.
maybe you consider it's not a matter that a police officers need to be there, but actually one police officer was killed by
Yeah.
the aggressor,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So it's how do you will address something like that?
I think no, actually, any form of violence, domestic violence situation would warrant a police
We will
officer.
have a police
Absolutely,
officer.
absolutely, yes.
Okay,
And that's the situation. Any violent situation
need to
would
have.
need to have an officer. Anything that, in which people's lives are at risk, or anyone is at risk in general, I think that that would warrant an officer to respond. But the situation we're seeing right now is that there's a lot of phone calls that
Who are not?
need officers, that officers are not showing up, or they show up too late
I
or
know,
hours
right?
later, right? And so that's why we're saying that in non-violent situations, in situations that doesn't need an officer to show up, which also, by the way, again,
Right,
officers are saying to us at the Capitol, we don't need to show up to every single call.
right.
Then they can show up on time for those violent
For those
situations. And I
violence.
think I think that's the right approach to keep our communities more safe. But and go ahead.
Yeah. No. I
Yeah.
was going to ask you. Another challenge is that we are short in police. How will you help to recruit more police?
Yes.
Because I think, like you say, now after the George Floyd, many people even
Yeah.
are afraid to be a police,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Because they've been a target also
Absolutely.
for the community. So how will you help to increase police um, numbers
So
in
there's a
the
set
minute?
number. Two things. There's a set number in the charter of how many officers we need, right?
Yeah.
And on top of that, the last 5 years since the murder of George Floyd, the police budget has only increased every single year to a historic level every single year.
Mm-hmm.
And so while we are recruiting officers, we need to have a holistic conversation about public safety, because no matter how many officers you add, we're asking them to do too much. We're asking them to address every single societal failure. That's the responsibility of government. And what do I mean by that? We need to address poverty. We need to make sure that people have sustainable work. We need to make
Right.
sure that people, our kids have adequate education, and that we're
Yes.
supporting our public schools. We need to make sure that we have clean air and clean water. We need to make sure that our streets are safe, right? But no matter, if we don't address people's basic needs, we can't just say we're going to add every single more officers and then that's the solution to everything. We need to take a more holistic approach with
Yeah.
public safety, meaning
Definitely.
people's basic needs, having officers, having alternatives, and all working together at once. And I think that that's doable.
Yeah, we have to work on a lot of prevention, right?
Exactly
Like
right.
definitely.
Exactly. And for example, we need to be proactive. My goal is to have an ambitious youth agenda, because they are going to be our future. How do we increase youth programming in the city and also provide youth jobs? There's a program called Teen Teamworks at the city of
Okay.
Minneapolis, in which teenagers 16 to 24 get hired in the park system, right? Getting a livable wage, $16, $18 an hour. That's something that I worked to put in money at the Capitol to expand to a few hundred kids, right? Those are the kind of programs we need to have to keep our kids busy, but also put money in their pockets. And that kind of solution, long term, um, investments into our kids, not an expense, investment, is the approach that I would like to take.
Okay, yeah, I like to the idea of the prevention and do definitely the youth and special right before they
Exactly.
become like ad members or drug users. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about your housing and affordability. I know you mentioned you want to make housing in Minneapolis more affordable.
Yes,
How
exactly.
do you plan to do that?
Yes, absolutely. So I was I was a legislator that led on the Minneapolis 2040 bill at the Capitol lawsuit, which opened the way for more affordable housing, things like multiplexes, things like transit-oriented density, meaning building near transit stations and things like that. And so I believe that we need to do more to build more affordable housing, but truly affordable housing. Folks shouldn't be spending more than a third of their income on rent. And we could do things like invest in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Uh, I want to see our renters also being protected with rent stabilization, working to craft a policy with city council, with stakeholders. We also know that folks that are housed right now, that we need to make sure that they have quality living conditions in their housing also. I remember I visited in Loring Park some units that their front door was broken into, their mailboxes were not working.
Oh yes.
Their in the laundry room had black mold, units had black mold, and so we want to make sure that people have quality conditions. Uh, but to keep it affordable, we need to have locally owned properties, not having these gigantic entities from out of state like Los Angeles, New York, Atlanta, buying up large amounts of property because their goal isn't to keep people housed. Their goal is to make a profit. And so if we want to make sure that we are able to have our residents first be able to things like Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, Community Opportunity to Purchase Act, uh, thinking for creative ways to keep properties locally owned here in Minnesota.
Yes, and it's actually a very good point. And I wanted to ask you, how would you reconciliate? Because we have also landlords, right? They own buildings here, and they want to have obviously tenants, but obviously the rent price go according to the inflation, right? And if we have more inflation, but if we have allowed it, okay, you cannot increase the rent, and how landlords can also, have benefit from provide affordable housing without losing money.
That's a good point. And so a couple of things. Number one, we know that the number one reason for folks experiencing homelessness is that they're being evicted or priced out. And so our goal to cap or to eliminate homelessness is to keep people housed.
Right.
That's number one. Number two, when we talk about rent stabilization policy, it's important to craft a policy with landlords, with city council, with folks, so that we're making sure that we can walk and chew gum at the same time. And what do I mean by that? I don't believe it's an either or approach in terms of maintaining affordable housing, building more affordable housing, or pursuing rent stabilization. I think we could do both at the same time. Now, I'm open to the idea of things like having exemptions for new properties, having incentivizing good behavior, meaning if this many amount of units are going to be affordable, then you can be exempt from rent stabilization, things like that. So there's ways we can craft policy in with all stakeholders, and I think we can get there. We know that in 2021, the majority of the city of Minneapolis, they voted to have us have the discussion and explore rent stabilization and to vote on it. And I think we got to make good on that referendum that passed.
Yeah, I think Minneapolis is one of the cities who actually have increased more affordable housing.
Yes.
I believe it's like $5 million they spend every year or something in the budget.
That's for the
Okay.
Minneapolis Public Housing Authority.
Okay.
And I was one of the folks that led on that at the Capitol.
So you think we need to probably put more money in that, or?
So yeah, absolutely. We got to have both an affordable housing approach and a public housing approach, publicly owned. So the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority that manages all the public housing stock, they have a backlog of hundreds of millions of dollars in rehabilitation for their units to make sure that they just become fair or good quality to live in, meaning there's no heat or AC, meaning that there's crumbling infrastructure and things like that. And those are buildings where not only folks that are low income live in or fixed income, but a lot of seniors and elderly folks live in, right? And so, yes, we have $5 million yearly going in, but we got to do a lot more. But we also have to partner with the state to bring in more money to address the backlog. But I don't believe that our current mayor can do that. We have to have someone with the relationships at the Capitol to be able to do so.
So I wanted to ask you, what is the difference? Like we listen in the news, like you was endorsed for the Democrat Party, and then they revoke the. How is the difference? Because many people in the Latino community specifically don't understand what is the difference between the Democrat Party, the regular Democrat Party, and the Democrat Socialist Party. What is the difference?
Yeah, the Democratic Socialists of America, DSA, is an organization. It's not an official party. In fact, there's many caucuses within the DFL. There's a senior caucus, There is a disabilities caucus. There's even a democratic socialist caucus within the DFL. And so um, for their process of the election, we don't have a primary. We have something called a caucus system and a convention. On caucus night, neighbors go out to different precincts, meaning different neighborhoods. They vote on who becomes delegates based off of the support for every candidate. Those delegates go to the convention. And then at the convention, whoever has 60% of the delegate support gets endorsed. On the convention day, we got the DFL endorsement in the process, along with the same process, a whole host of park board elections the same day. What we saw is that there was a board bylaw constitution rules committee from the DFL state that was made up of 28 members, mostly out of state, a lot of who also aligned with the mayor, voted to take that away, right? And so we know that there was a video that went public online that showed one of the mayor's PAC's political action committees said that I have a whole bunch of checks from wealthy donors. I cannot cash it unless Omar's endorsement is taken away. And so there was wealthy influence that had power in this decision-making process. And that's very clear in evidence. But what we saw is that them taking away the endorsement actually backfired. People got upset because they saw it was an injustice that we rightfully earned. And so we saw a spike in not only fundraising, but an amount of volunteers, people from different backgrounds, renters, immigrants that are Latino, East African, folks that are seniors and young people turning out to door knock to support this cause. And so we've only seen a huge, massive increase in excitement for the campaign
for
afterwards.
your campaign.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you and Fred, like I said, you and Fry are like the most contender, right? And it's calling a lot of attention, especially like in New York having a Mandani also running as a social Democrat socialist. It's like, oh, what is the difference? So,
Yes.
and I tell you because socialists can scare a little bit the Latino community, especially the people who come from Venezuela or from Cuba or Nicaragua that had experienced socialism, right? And it's been a bad experience, to be completely honest, because you know the decay of Cuba, Venezuela. We can see now how the countries actually went down. One example, for example, is Argentina. Argentina was socialism until now Javier Milei started, and now is resurging with capitalism. So for our audience, what is what do you think? What part of socialism you like, or what apply to your party? Yeah.
So historically, there's the reason why I think 7, 8 years ago I joined the DSA
Right.
was because to me there was a clear cut difference between the term progressivism and DSA.
Right.
Progressive used to for me used to have a meaning and a term that then went from having a meaning to a spectrum.
Right.
And what do I mean by that? You can be a progressive, but then you can be a legislator that takes big oil money.
Right.
Or you can be a progressive and you can have anti-immigrant, anti-trans policies in your you can be a progressive and you can be supporting or be a corporate Democrat, for example, right?
Right.
And so for us, DSA, you either support working people or you don't. You either believe healthcare is a human right or you don't. You either believe our most vulnerable, like our immigrant communities, deserve protection or we don't, right? And so our vision for the city is to make it more affordable, making sure that renters have a place to stay and can stay in their homes, making sure that folks earn a livable wage, making sure that our public school systems are fully supported. Also, and you spoke about business earlier, supporting small businesses, especially
Tell me about that.
especially immigrant-owned businesses. And I think people, when they say someone is anti-business, they like to conflate big business like Walmart or Target with small businesses. And there's a big difference between supporting like a small Ecuadorian restaurant versus supporting Target. You know what I mean? And so our goal is to ensure that we're supporting small businesses. That's why I want to have a strong office of small business support, so that we can provide multilingual services for have people help with startups, help provide grants, startup grants,
For a small
help
business.
yep
Yeah.
help reduce barriers for folks like the immigrant community example,
Hmm.
help reduce barriers to start a business, right? Because we know folks have an entrepreneurial spirit, and so that's the vision we have, supporting those small businesses and to ensure that not just the culture but uh, the beautiful diversity
The
we're experiencing
accessibility. Yeah, the
in Minneapolis
accessibility.
maintains exactly,
Yeah,
and we
like
want to have that accessibility. And so that's the vision we have for like Lake Street and Nicollet and all that, making sure that those folks are supported.
well, that actually you bring me a good
Yeah.
point, a good question for you.
Mm.
And this is probably one of the most difficult questions I always ask. How do you feel about immigration? And obviously, what is your position in ICE?
Yeah.
And I'm very
Yeah.
familiar with your
Yeah.
answer, but
Yeah.
I
Sure.
want
For
my
sure. For sure.
audience to know,
Yeah.
like, what is
Got
your
you.
position on ICE
Yes. So
specifically?
absolutely. So I'm the son of immigrants from Somalia. My dad came in 1963 on a college scholarship, and my mom came shortly later in the 70s. And then I was born in Washington, D.C. And so, what I'm hearing clearly from neighbors is that they're terrified. And we know that ICE and federal agents are coming in, not just in Minneapolis, but nationwide, different cities. And what we saw, for example, in Minneapolis on June 3rd on Lake in Bloomington was a strategic failure on the part of the city. And what do I mean by that? Uh, MPD and the mayor fail to disclose information in a timely manner to our city council members, even so that they can disseminate that information to community members to know what's going on, what is occurring. What we saw on that day is community members come to the scene
Hmm.
because neighbors care about one another and they want to protect one another, right?
Right.
And there was a level of anxiety and fear that was legitimate and justified. And what I would have done as a mayor is that as soon as I knew what was happening, number one, I wouldn't have allowed MPD to collaborate with ICE, meaning don't assist them in crowd control, don't assist them in in exiting the scene. And we had ICE that in a leaked email, we saw ICE email MPD saying thank you for your assistance, right?
Hmm.
And so in fact, when I approached to the scene on that day, I wasn't informed by the city members that elected officials that were on the scene weren't informed by the mayor or the
Hmm.
city. They were informed by boots on the ground Latino organizations that said,
Hmm.
"Hey, this is what's happening. We need your help. Come to the scene." Right.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so what I envision is that we build a front line of defense as the city of Minneapolis, protecting our neighbors, strengthening our separation ordinance so that MPD does not collaborate with ICE, making sure that we're partnering with the boots on the ground organizations, and there's a lot of them, like IX Inclinidos, and I apologize if I mispronounce it. Setul, Copal, Unidos. There's a whole host of organizations that do really good work on the ground, right? And so, how do we partner with them as a city as well to ensure that we're doing things like know your rights training, educating folks about what's happening, and things like that? I think that's the right approach.
Okay. I will like, I mean, I'm agree with part of your
Yeah,
statement, but
yeah,
I want to challenge a little bit. Is that
of
okay?
course, 100%, yes.
So I'm an immigrant, right? And
Yeah.
I work a lot with the Latino community. And something that I hear, and I'm gonna be very transparent with you. Even some of the Latino organizations in Minnesota, I think they are not doing a good service to the own Latino community. Because, for example, I'm agree with you, and that we need to protect immigrant communities. It's a lot of good, hardworking people, regardless how they got here, right? They are hard workers. They help a lot to the economy. Great neighbors, good
Yeah.
community members. For the other side, during the Biden administration, the open border was a disaster. We have a lot of sex trafficking, especially because I work very close with sex trafficking, and a lot of these sex trafficking victims are children, right? So how you mean? In fact, Minnesota is in the first 5 states with the high numbers in sex trafficking. I don't know
Mm,
if you are aware. It's no, we don't talk a lot about it, which is strange to me. But so when I see federal agencies try to get rid of the cartel drug cartels, the sex traffickers, and try to protect these children, how do you conciliate to, okay, we're going to help to get rid of these criminals, but at the same time, how we can protect the community members?
And that's a very good question. And so, what we know, and I appreciate you bringing that up, is that
Right.
the Latino community are not a monolith, meaning they're not under one belief system. They're not under
Right.
where we all believe this one thing. So I
Right.
appreciate that perspective
Thank
also,
you.
because that's very
And
important.
I think for all
Yes.
immigrants as
Yeah.
well, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. 110%. Yes. And so, and the immigrant community as a whole in general is not under one belief system, and that's 100% correct. But we have to. But I'm under the belief, and what my values tell me also is that when people are fleeing a country, when they're fleeing persecution, they're seeking a better life, they're
Right.
not doing it to commit a crime, they're not doing it to cause harm, they're doing it for a reason, right? And so you mentioned human trafficking, sex trafficking. I think that the city has to play a large role in that, in fighting against that.
Yeah.
And that's up for our officers also to play a role in that,
Yeah.
which is why I spoke to earlier that if we continue to have a strategic failure with our police, with our public safety system at the city of Minneapolis, we're taking away officers that are able to not only go after that, but to adequately investigate and provide folks with the closure and the justice that they need. Right, the victims deserve justice. So if we're having officers being pulled off of cases, from investigations, from trafficking cases, to answer every single call, then we're going to continue to see folks that are victims of sex trafficking, human trafficking, slip through the cracks and not get the justice that they deserve. And that's why we're speaking towards a more comprehensive public safety system, so that we're more strategic and making sure that folks, that our officers are able to better do their job. We're not saying that immigrants are coming here to cause crime or
Well,
fleeing
some
to
do.
some.
Some do,
No,
right?
no,
Like,
I believe that the
okay.
overwhelming majority of folks,
Oh no, I'm agree with you.
there's
The majority of people, I'm agree with you. So
yeah,
I think we can agree
yeah,
on that. Like the majority of people would come with a good intention, but we know. I mean, just alone in the Biden administration, he lost more than 3,500 children,
yeah,
unaccompanied.
yeah, yeah.
Right? I think have been rescued about 150,000. So, like I say, I am 100%. I think we
Yeah.
can agree in that the majority people come with good intention, me included,
Yeah.
right? Because I'm an immigrant. And a lot of my best friends, we are all immigrants and we
Yeah.
come probably some cross the river 100%. Do we have, I believe the Homeland page, even this is before even Trump start, they 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 say that we have so many terrorists came to the country. So I think my question for you will be like, at least in a level, will you willing to work with federal agents like FBI, ICE, or something,
I think drug trafficking and
or
sex
like
trafficking is a very
and issues
valid
like that,
a
right?
very valid issue. But what
Right,
we're seeing is a difference. What we're seeing is, for example, uh, if there's ICE agents going to folks standing outside of Home Depot, just
right.
picking them up,
Oh, that, yeah, I'm
or
disagree with
going
that.
or going saying, "Show us your
To
papers."
somebody's house,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, that shouldn't be happening,
of
right?
course, 100%.
So I think we agree that people should be protected at all costs. That's
Yes,
number one.
I'm agree with you on that.
And I think that's the unease we're seeing, is because there's too many instances of innocent people being stopped for absolutely no reason other than being an immigrant, right? And
Right, which
so
is not okay.
exactly
Right,
100%. And so we can have that conversation about how we can safely interact cross jurisdictionally to address the issues of sex trafficking, for example, so that victims get justice. That's 100% valid. But we know that when it comes to human trafficking, sex trafficking, gun violence,
right,
all this stuff,
exactly,
it's
exactly.
all communities. It's just not immigrants. We've seen it with every single
In every
community,
single
right?
community.
And so, how do we address the root causes of that also? Uh,
Yes.
for ex- for
How
ex-
will you
for
how will you do it?
for example, with gun violence, we know that it's happening within our churches, our places of worship, our schools, our public
Yeah,
spaces.
correct.
We've seen uh, uh, elected officials getting targeted, like Speaker Hortman and her husband were murdered this past summer,
Yeah,
and Senator John Hoffman. And so
Charlie Kirk.
John Hoffman, yeah, Charlie Kirk, but John Hoffman and his wife survived, thankfully.
Oh
My good
yeah,
friend, but they were also victims of this, right?
right.
That's gonna carry on for them forever. And so, what we need to see is that we need sensible gun legislation. And if the federal government doesn't step up at the state level, if the state level doesn't step up at the city level, for things like uh, assault weapons that are used for mass casualties, for weapons of war, I think that's more than reasonable. Investing in mental health,
That's
just making sure that those are the approaches we need to take to keep our community safe. But what we're seeing from folks at the federal level is that not only is there unwillingness to pass that kind of legislation, they cite, well, we need more mental health resources, but they're also gutting mental health support also.
yeah.
So,
How will you do that? Because I'm agree with you. I think
yeah,
mental health is like skyrocketing in
yeah,
our country, not only in our
yeah,
state, but in our
especially
country,
after COVID. Yeah,
especially after
yes, yes,
COVID,
yes,
in Minneapolis,
yes,
after George Floyd being the center.
yes.
So, how will you approach mental health?
That's a very good question. And so I'm the chair of the Senate. I'm the vice chair, I'm sorry, the vice chair of the Senate Human Services Committee.
Okay.
And so a lot of things we tackle is around elderly care, folks with disabilities, addiction, and also and part of that is also mental health. And so we need more deep investments in mental health support, but we need to do things like partner with the state and the county to bring in the resources to the city. And one of the reasons why I'm running for mayor is that the mayor has failed to do that. And part of it is because there's a breakdown in relationship between the mayor
And the
and
city council.
not, yeah, exactly, but it's not only city council. So in the media they talk about city council versus the mayor, which is 100% correct, but it extends beyond that. It extends to him not having a good relationship with the county commissioners. He doesn't have a good relationship with state legislators, and that's the reason why the mayor doesn't have a single county endorsement. He doesn't have a single state legislator endorsing him, is because he failed to work well with people and taking a my way or the highway approach. One of the things I learned as a senator when I got elected is that when you draft policy or formulating policy, you're not always going to get whatever you want or everything that you want, right? But it's important to work with progressive Democrats, conservative Democrats, Republicans to at least make a good first step, and understanding you're all not going to get everything that you want, but we're all elected from different districts to represent different ideas and different opinions. How do we work together to for our goal to serve people, right? And one of the areas in which we agree on with my Republican colleagues at the Capitol is around mental health support, disability services
Yes.
support. In fact, is one of the areas that are interesting in human services because in every committee, usually we have a bumping of heads with Democrats and Republicans, but in human services, sometimes it's Senate Democrats and Republicans together versus House Republicans and Democrats, right? So it shows you that we have a lot more common ground when it comes to
Oh,
serving
yes.
folks with disabilities, seniors, and folks with mental health that need mental health support. And I think those are one of the areas in which we can do a lot better, because as the mayor, I'll not only be going to Democrats for support, I'll be going to Republicans because we know that they also care about that too, if that makes sense. And so
Yeah, it makes
that would
sense.
be
And
very important.
I think actually, we, like you and me talked before the interview, like
Yeah.
I think I would like to close a little bit more the division between Democrats and Republicans, right? Because at the end of the day, I think all our communities, if we really talk and have a this conversation,
Yeah.
like you and me right now, we can see that we can all want the same thing. We want safety cities, right?
Yeah,
We want
yeah.
a safety place to live. We want good school for our
Yeah.
children, and we want to be able to afford our house and
Yeah.
a good living, right? Like
Yes. Yes. Yes.
so, and I think most people will be agree in that.
Yeah.
Um, so I appreciate that you come here
Thank you.
and give your point of view,
Thank
and
you.
our listener can hear what you are about.
Thank you.
What will be your legacy if you win as a mayor? What would you like to see be your legacy in 4 or 5 years or 10 years from now? People remember you.
Well, I'll say two things: one policy side and one relationship side. I want to see a city in which we heal from our division, because on the relationship side, because right now it seems that when people think differently, then there's an assumption of bad faith or ill intent, right? And so where I want to go, for example, there was a lot of pain and trauma after the murder of George Floyd,
Mhm.
and rightfully so. But rather than saying, well, you want to abolish the police or defund the police, or you want to take money, therefore you're crazy, we have to understand, okay, why do certain neighbors feel this way? How did we get to a position in which folks are saying, we don't believe we have a public safety system that supports all of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And on this campaign, what I've learned from folks is that no matter where they fall on the political spectrum of policing, whether they want more police or they want to reform or they want alternatives or they want to abolish, no matter where they fall on the spectrum, everyone's unhappy right now, right? And so, how do we heal that pain for everyone? That's number one. Number two, I envision a city that's more welcoming, that's thriving, in which people have a livable wage, in which we're seeing that our immigrant communities are protected, and we're able to support and better service small businesses so that they can thrive. We maintain our diversity, not just in terms of appearances but and ethnicity, but in terms of thought also, because we know within each community, as you said, there's a diversity of opinion also. How do we better support our public schools? One of the proudest moments of my life at the Capitol was passing something called the North Star Promise, which was tuition-free college for working class families. And so when I first drafted it, it was universal, right? But because of the conversations we had, it got limited down to families that are working class, $80,000 or less. And so my legacy now that at the Capitol that I'm proud about is now we have tens of thousands of students that can go to college that couldn't go before. And so my hope is that to leave a similar legacy, that we finally represent working families and not the wealthy and the well-connected. And that's the vision I have for Minneapolis.
Well, it's a good vision.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for coming. I know, like I said, we prepared it very fast, but I
Thank you.
really appreciate you willing to come to
Appreciate you.
Minnesota Latin Radio and have this conversation.
Thank
Good
you.
luck to you.
Thank you so much. And I
And
appreciate the
if you are
opportunity.
welcome to come back
Yes.
after the election, we'll see.
Hopefully
You
next
wanna
time I'll
come?
be mayor.
Oh,
Yes.
hopefully.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Well, thank you so much.
Take it easy. Thank you so much.
Gracias, amigos.